Okay, so yes, that's me, Anne McDonald. I'm the commercial lawyer. So these are the sort of areas that I practice in for commercial law. So leasing for landlords and tenants, either drafting or reviewing leases, sales and purchases of business, drafting commercial agreements, license agreements, partnership agreements, joint ventures, anything really, contractor agreements, consultancy, whatever you need for your business, I can probably help you. Advising on commercial agreements and franchise agreements. I've done quite a few franchise agreements lately. Everybody seems to be moving into getting business. I've also done some trademarks, website terms and conditions, privacy policies, and in banking I can advise on guarantees and loan documents and draft private loans if you need those. So this week I'm going to talk about 4 commercial documents you may need in your business. I know I've done this one before, but I thought we'd have a review. Of course, you always need to get legal advice because every situation is different and specific to your needs. But let's go through some of the documents that you need. All right, so terms and conditions. These could be, so terms and conditions are a document governing the contractual relationship between the provider of a service and its user and clarifies the conditions of use of its services. They're aimed at protecting the business, which is you. So they're important to have because if you don't have terms and conditions, if something goes wrong, what are you going to rely on? You can't rely on much. And so, so they can help deal with problems which may arise during your engagement with your client. They can prevent a problem happening in the first place, and they protect the provider of the service from potential liability. So, you know, terms and conditions can have things in it like an indemnity, you know, so that you're protected if anything goes wrong, how you're paid during the whole process. Here's an example. What happens if your client doesn't pay your invoice on time? So if you've got terms and conditions, you can look at that and it stipulates how it's going to be paid. Han, I'm sure that you would need terms and conditions in relation to how you're being paid because you do different stages at different times and you probably want to be paid for those. So this is an example of one that I did for someone. So they wanted to have 50% before you start and then 50% on completion. It also says in there, I think, that, yep, payment of invoices, strictly 7 days. You want to make sure that you do that, and you can do that with terms and conditions because you can't give people as long as they like to pay. And that gives you the ability to charge interest if you want to, if somebody hasn't paid you for months. Okay, so that's terms and conditions. Next thing that you might want is a privacy policy. So a privacy policy is a statement that explains how an organisation handles clients' personal information. Under the Privacy Act, organisations with annual turnover more than 3 million and operating in Australia must have one. But even if you don't make that much money, and maybe none of us make that much money yet, but we will, won't we? So, and you collect personal information. I mean, we all collect some sort of personal information about somebody, their names, addresses, dates of birth, those kinds of things. Then you should consider having one because it can show transparency and responsibility, and clients may be more inclined to trust you with their information. So terms and conditions and privacy policies often can go together, and if you've got a website and you mostly do business through your website, it's good to have those on there on your website so that people can, when they go on there, they can have a look at those and understand what their obligations are and also how you handle their information, etc. All right, so the third one, contractor or subcontractor agreement. So a contractors agreement is entered into when one party wishes to engage a contractor to provide services. It may be for a one-off service, or it could be ongoing continual service. Contractors agreement is important to have because it protects the interests of the party engaging the contractor, which is you. And it sets out information like distinguishes the arrangement as an independent contractor as opposed to employee. So you all know there are different responsibilities if you're a contractor as to whether you're an employee. If you are wanting to have a contractor, but somehow, and you don't have anything in place, and somehow it looks more like an employment arrangement, you could end up having to pay more entitlements for that person. So it's important to have everything in writing because then it's there. And these days, they look at the actual contract to see what the arrangement is. So it's even more important. So it describes the services as well. So you might just say, come on, I need a contractor. Come and work with me. They might not know what they actually have to do. But if it's in an agreement, you can list what it is. And then if they're not doing exactly what you want them to do, you can go, look, mate, here it is. You haven't been doing what you're supposed to do. It also gives the contractor obligations, so all the things that they need to do in this relationship. There's indemnity and confidentiality clauses, payment, termination provisions. So confidentiality clauses might be important to you too, depending on what kind of business you have. You might do certain things that you don't want others to know. So it's important that there's people that work for you don't spread your personal information, your confidential information. Okay. Why have an agreement? An agreement is important as it will distinguish whether a person is a contractor or employee. This can have consequences in relation to the person's entitlements, like long service leave, holidays, what you have to pay them, okay? All right, and the last document you may want to use is a confidentiality agreement or an NDA. So a confidentiality agreement, also known as a non-disclosure agreement or an NDA, is a contract between two or more parties where the subject of the agreement is a promise that information conveyed will be maintained in secrecy. Confidentiality agreements protect your interest and can protect information such as processes, trade secrets, know-how, ideas, financial information. So if you're going to do a deal with somebody, you know, there's all kinds of groups in here, and there may be people who decided to join up and do a venture together. You know, if you're sharing your company information with this other person, then you may well need a confidentiality agreement. They can, next one. So they can be mutual agreements or unilateral agreements where only the receiving party becomes obligated to maintain secrecy. So when you enter into these ventures with people, you need to be careful and you need to document things because you never know what might happen one day. Something might go wrong. You enter into an agreement with someone and you're friends with them and you know them, you trust them, but you just never know what might happen. And that's why lawyers are there to help you for when that thing you didn't know was going to happen might happen. So yeah, it's important. And I think that might be it. Oh. So some examples: pitch to a potential investor or licensee, sale of business or a company during a due diligence period. So these are some other examples of when you might need a confidentiality agreement. And, you know, we might all have these kinds of situations one day. So, all right, and that's really it. My target markets, business owners, companies in business, commercial real estate agents, accountants and financial planners, mortgage brokers. So thank you for listening to me today. And